I'm Jaclyn.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Welcome back to our next episode. I don't know what number this is, I'm sorry, but we are here and you are here, and that's
episode
wonderful.
5. I just had to count in my head.
Yes, it is episode 5. So we're just pros now. We got this down. At the time that we are recording this, we officially launched all of our social media stuff yesterday for our big official launch day this week. So thank you so much to everyone who liked, commented, went and subscribed and listened. We got such amazing feedback, so we are just so grateful to you guys for that.
Yeah, it was super humbling just to see, as soon as we posted it, everyone being like, I'm listening, I listened, I love it, here's some recommendations, all that stuff. It was really awesome, guys. It's pretty cool to have those kind of friends and family in your life, even the ones you haven't talked to in a while that were just like, hey, I love true crime podcasts, I'm gonna listen. Yes. And I'm like, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Thank you for your support, guys. I mean, obviously we do this because we enjoy it and we think it's fun, but we would like other people to listen and enjoy as well. So we really appreciate you, and we welcome your feedback. Let us know what you think of the episodes. Let us know what you want to hear. We're down for it. We'd love to interact with you guys as much as possible and, build and grow this little true crime community. So thank you guys.
It would be super awesome. You guys are awesome. Except that person who gave us 3 out of 5 stars on iTunes.
Yeah, and that was our very first iTunes review, so that was not great. Thanks.
I mean, and I can respect that. We might not be everyone's cup of tea. We're a little crazy sometimes, but if you're gonna give a 1, 2, 3, even maybe sometimes a 4-star, if you could just explain why, so we know if we're doing something extremely wrong, if we're super fucking annoying, something,
just give us a little bit of guidance to go off of instead of just a random number. But
if we're 5 weeks in and already have vocal fry, we just need to know.
And maybe it's something that we'll work on, and maybe it's something that's just our personalities, and we're just not for you, and that's okay, too.
Yeah, please don't say, the podcast would be better without Courtney. Because that would hurt my feelings.
That would be a really boring podcast, too.
It would be Jaclyn just kind of laughing, and then be like, okay, never mind. All right.
Okay, there's nobody to respond to my joke. Okay, I mean, that's pretty much how my life goes when there are people around, but it's fine. Yeah, I'm tired today, Courtney, because, as you know, we spent the last 2 mornings at the emergency vet with Rosie, because last weekend while we were recording, she ate something that she should not have, and she was fine, and then yesterday morning she was vomiting and diarrhea all over the floor multiple times. So at 5:30 in the morning, we took her to the emergency vet to make sure that what she had eaten did not get stuck. And so we had to do x-rays yesterday, and we were there for 3 hours, and then she had to fast all day yesterday, and they had to do x-rays again this morning. But just a few minutes ago, they called and said everything is good, everything's moving. So my happy baby was able to eat this morning for the first time in almost 48 hours. So she was very happy about that, and we're very happy about that, and just several $100s poorer. But we know everything's fine, so it's okay.
Yeah, but you did save thousands of dollars without surgery, so.
Yes, that is true. It could have been a lot more expensive, so we're grateful for that, and just glad our baby's okay and all that good stuff, so.
Yeah, and it's daylight savings time, so we just lost an hour too, so I really feel that sometimes. I mean, I didn't have to work at my job today, so it really sucks for people who had to do that.
Yeah, but losing that whole hour and hopping in, and it's just, and this week is a full moon and daylight savings.
And it'll be Friday the 13th, which is my favorite day.
Yes, and Friday the 13th, and also the coronavirus is still going around, guys. So it's just it's quite a week.
Basically, in Ed Gein, I made a joke about a little 5th grader giving everyone coronavirus, and the coronavirus was like, fuck you, Courtney.
Yep.
I'm coming to America.
I'm going to show you.
Oops.
Yep, so just wash your hands and Lysol things. And
don't touch your face.
Yes, don't touch your face. And if you are sick, please don't go out in public. I know it's hard. I know, unfortunately, the United States policies do not reflect the need to stay home when you are sick, with the amount of sick leave that most people get. But if at all possible, please try to stay home. Yes, many people who get the coronavirus will be just fine, but a lot of people will not. Same thing as the flu. Same thing, guys. So just general life advice to wash your hands and stay home when you're sick.
Yeah, because, I mean, if me and Jaclyn got it, we're both young, we're both healthy, we don't really have any, autoimmune disorders, but, people who have autoimmune disorders, who are elderly, who are babies, they're very susceptible to, this virus, so it is killing people. A lot of people are recovering, but let's not, forget people do die from it, too, so just, be clean. Don't, also, you don't really need to stockpile toilet paper.
No.
And you don't need the masks. Those don't help.
The masks don't help. I don't know why you're buying more soap and Lysol than normal, because you should just be doing your typical cleaning practices.
Yeah, the thing on Facebook where it's like, just a reminder, please also wash your hands when there's not a global, virus going around.
Exactly. So that's the first Jaclyn and Courtney Soapbox Corner. I'm sure there will be another one soon.
Well, I'm sure, if coronavirus turns into the bubonic plague, and I made a joke about it in Ed Gein, then I'm going to probably be hunted down.
Yep. Don't dox Courtney.
Yeah, please don't. It was just a joke. I see your memes on Facebook. Y'all are joking too, just because I said it out loud and not with my fingertips. Okay?
Yep. Exactly. All right, so today we are actually going to have a two-parter for you guys. So you will get the first part today, and you will get the second part next week, because we do have jobs and lives and other important things that we just could not fit all of this information into one episode, and we're just not going to be able to release them in the same day. So you're going to have a little teaser to get you through to next week. So we are going to do a two-parter today, and today we are covering the I-5 killer, which I did not know anything about before. Like, I knew that was a name of a serial killer, but I didn't know any of the details of this case. So maybe some of you have also not heard of it, and you'll learn something new.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and list our resources. And so most of our information, like 98% of our information, comes from The I-5 Killer by Ann Rule. It was a good book. You guys should go read it. There's more detail than we included.
Yep. A lot of detail.
A lot of detail.
But it's a good read.
Yeah, it is. So we use an article from Sports Illustrated, an article from K2, which is a local Portland news site, Oregon Live, we have a few articles from them, and also the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yep.
There's also a few references to the RAIN website and a local lawyer in Oregon, Neil Weingart. We used his website as well. So, all right, I'm going to get into this I-5 killer.
Whew, let's get into it.
He's a handful, so just be prepared. So, between December 9th, 1980 and January 12th of 1981, there was a string of robberies among gas stations and fast food restaurants among the I-5 in Washington and Oregon. So these robberies weren't really for like large sums of money. Like I think in one he took like $35, like just very small amounts of money. And then in Seattle, he was robbing a Church's Fried Chicken, and he ordered a 25-year-old woman named Kim Meehan into the bathroom. He fondled her and forced her to touch him until he ejaculated. He tells her to count to 100 and then leave. This does come into play. Don't worry. So, there was another robbery in Sutherland, and so Susie Benet saw the gun a man presented, and she just thought he was joking, and he ended up shooting her and stealing $100. So this is 1980 money. So I did a little math through a website. It wasn't me. It was a website.
The website did the math. Courtney just put it in.
I just put in the little, dates and money amounts. Yep. So in today's money, that's $283.80, which, I mean, it's a bit of money, but it's like you're shooting someone over basically like $300.
It's a very odd series of robberies. You typically don't rob fast food restaurants and gas stations. Well, I guess gas stations you do, but he was getting such small sums of money that it was just a very interesting case for the police. Like, who is this guy? What is he doing? This isn't what we typically see.
You know, he just got off the thrill of robbing. I mean, like our Virginia arsonists, like they just love to light fires, so they did it. On January 14th, fair warning, this does involve young children. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Anne Rule does in her book, but I'm not going to make you guys read that.
Yeah, the details are out there if you are interested, but for the sake of not getting too much into child sexual assault, we're going to keep the details kind of to a minimum here.
So there was Marisu, who was 10, and Megan, who was 8. They were home alone while their mom was working out. So a man rings the doorbell. He says his car broke down. He needs to use the phone. So he eventually does push himself inside, and Marisu keeps telling him to leave. And he's like, let's watch TV. And she's like, no, you need to leave. But he eventually forces them into the bathroom, and he does sexually assault them. And then I think he also tells them to count and leaves. The kind of same little MO there. So.
And then their mom gets home and finds them hiding in the bathroom, and they tell her, you know, someone's in the house, someone's robbing us, and so she grabs her kids and runs next door to call the police.
So, January 18th, 1981, Salem, Oregon, 911 receives a call. Anne Rule refers to her in the book as Beth Wilmot, but Anne Rule's book was released very soon after all this happened, and so it seems like it was a name change. She has come forward and released her real name, so we're going to use that because she's a total badass, and her name is out there, so we don't really feel like we're like outing her or anything. Her name is Lisa Garcia, so we're going to refer to her as Lisa from now on. So she and her best friend, Sherry Hull, had been shot by a man. And so they were both working for Sherry's father. He had a cleaning company, and they were cleaning the Trans-American building, which was like, I think, their final building for this night. And so they were very diligent with their job. They noticed a smudge on the window, and Lisa's like, well, we got to clean that. And so Sherry takes the trash out, comes back in. And so Lisa notices when she comes back in, there's a man with her with a gun. So the man basically forces them to strip and then shoots them. So after he leaves, she's able to call 911, even though she has a gunshot wound to the head.
2 gunshot wounds to the head.
Oh, yes, 2 gunshot wounds to the head. And so when she's in the ambulance, she's like, look, listen to me. This is the description. I have to tell you. And she's telling the 911 operators as well. She's like, listen, it's a white male, mid-20s, 5'11" to 6 foot, slender build, dark brown hair, which I do believe at some point they say maybe she said blonde hair instead of dark brown hair. Mm-hmm. But that's a very minor detail. But it does come up later.
And I think she did say that once she was in the ambulance and had been given pain meds. So, I mean, come on. Like, girlfriend's got 2 bullets in her brain and is on pain meds. I'm sorry you slightly got the hair color wrong, but you also gave a very vivid description as soon as you called 911.
Yeah, and she also said he had a hooded black leather jacket and a Band-Aid on his nose. And so once he shot her, she said she just laid there and pretended to be dead and didn't make any noise. She said Sherry was moaning a bit, which she thinks is also why the guy shot her again, which ended up being a fatal blow. And so
Lisa did say that he shot them like back and forth. Like he shot her and then Sherry and then Lisa and then Sherry. Like, so he went back and forth. So after the last time he shot Sherry after she was moaning, Lisa decided she was just going to be quiet and hope that he thought that she was dead and left.
So when they're at the ER, they're like, oh, did he touch you? Did he molest you? And she's like, no. But they had done some tests, and it is positive that he had ejaculated in her mouth. Mm-hmm. She wasn't lying about this. She just simply did not remember because she is in shock. She's in trauma. She has 2 gunshot wounds to the head.
Yes.
So later she does start to remember. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'm sure she wishes she didn't. So he had forced oral sex on them, and like Jaclyn said, shot them alternatively. Mm-hmm. Sherry, unfortunately, did die later in the ER, so that's very tragic as well. And so the semen from Lisa's throat, it showed a type A or B blood, because we're back in the 1980s, so we don't have as much, DNA. So the bullet was a .32 caliber lead bullet, and also he had given her herpes. Lisa later does undergo hypnosis to a sketch art and is trying to describe the killer to a sketch artist to get a sketch. So I did a little bit of research on hypnosis. So obviously it's not an exact science or anything like that. They do say it can help because it's like meditation. So you're just kind of relaxing and calming down. And so maybe you might remember a few things from before, but especially like multiple sessions of hypnosis, like you're not going to remember anything. Like you don't remember from the beginning.
It's not like a magic cure that you were somewhere and you witnessed something and you have no memory of it, and then all of a sudden you go under hypnosis and you remember everything. It doesn't really work that way, and police departments did use hypnosis a lot in the 70s and 80s, and they don't really use it much anymore because it has come under so much scrutiny. And later on there is some issue legally with the fact that they use this hypnosis for Lisa. So we just wanted to kind of discuss a little bit about, it was used at this time, but that's not a current practice anymore, and it's not completely effective.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not horrible either. They do say, like, you can relax, like, it might help a little bit, but definitely don't use anything someone says in hypnosis as fact or anything.
Yes.
But also, studies do show that it does help with weight loss and addiction, which is interesting. So, all right, so we're jumping forward a little bit, just a little bit, because he's doing all this really quickly, to February 3rd. So we have Donna Lee Eckert, who's 37, and her daughter, Janelle Jarvis, 14. And they're at their home in Mountain Gate, California. So her daughter, who was 12, had called and been like, hey, Mom, is it okay if I go to my friend's house? Like, we're going to study, whatever. And she's like, yeah, go ahead. And Donna's husband, who's the stepdad to the kids, Steve Eckert, he's working a 24-hour shift at the fire station. Steve had talked to Donna at 3:30 that afternoon. So Donna had a minor surgical procedure, and so she was tired. So she was going to lay down. So Kristen arrives home at 8:52 p.m., and she finds her mom on her bed with the breast exposed, ankles crossed, and bound with surgical tape. Her arms were twisted beneath her and bound, and tape covered her mouth. Janelle was also naked, and her face was covered in blood. So she immediately calls 911 at 8:59. So I guess it was like 7 minutes after she gets home, but basically immediately. And poor Steve gets the call to his own house, to the scene. I can't even imagine.
Can you just imagine being police or fire department and you get the call and you see your own address?
Yeah, that has to be horrifying. And so both Donna and Janelle have been shot in the back of the head. Janelle had been shot 7 times and Donna 2 times. It was also a .32 caliber handgun. Police did confirm, Steve is on duty all night. They clear him because we always suspect the husband first, but he did have an alibi. He was at work. He couldn't have done it. So Kristen told the police that her mom had said she was going to go to Jake's Market, which was just their little convenience store, to get a couple things, but she never arrived there. And then the only thing missing from their home was Steve's gun. So they don't know maybe if he just stole the gun, wanted to use it later, whatever. It was missing.
But clearly this wasn't an intended robbery since none of the other valuables in the house were taken. Like, this was a 100% sexually motivated crime. It wasn't just a random robbery that went wrong or whatever.
Yeah, and so the autopsy did find semen in Janelle's throat that was post-mortem, and so this is like the same MO as Lisa and Sherry, which was 400 miles away, but also along the I-5. Later, it was confirmed the bullets and surgical tape in these murders matched the ones in Sherry and Lisa's murder/assault.
Yes.
So.
And like Courtney said, he is just, all of these crimes along the I-5 are just happening super rapidly. So actually the same night that Donna Eckert and her daughter Janelle Jarvis are murdered, 10 miles away, 46-year-old owner of the Burger Express, Mary Sloan, is working with her employee. We think it's Lia Morris, L-I-A. She was 18, so they were both working at the Burger Express. A man comes in, holds a gun on them, escorts them to the bathroom. He ties them up. He is sexually assaulting, fondling Marie while waiting for Laya to undress. He then forces Laya to perform oral sex on him and also attempts anal penetration at this time. So Marie's husband actually comes in during all of this, and he starts banging on the door, and so the man comes out, he holds up the gun on him, he tells him that he needs to go in the bathroom, and then the man with the gun leaves. So all of these crimes that we have talked about so far, where there is someone to give a description, they are giving the exact same description. So the description that Courtney described, that Lisa gave the police, is the same description that all of these robberies and sexual assaults, they're all seeing the same man.
And like you can kind of see he has like a preference for young girls, you know, like the 10 and 8-year-old I mentioned, and then like with Donna and Janelle, you know, it's like, oh well, he kind of fondled the mom, but it's like he wanted the young girl. And the same thing with this one, you know, Mary Sloan, like she was 46, you know, he wanted to like fondle her breast, but he wanted the young girl, which is just sick. But there it is, seeing that kind of adds into his MO a little bit, being like, well, maybe this is the same person, since it's like the exact same thing is happening in all these different little sections.
Yes. And the police departments actually were super ahead of the times in this case, because they were actually making the connection, talking to each other. Hey, I've had this string of crimes around the I-5 in California. I've had them in Oregon and Washington. And in the 80s, that really wasn't happening a lot. So good for them for kind of being alert and being ahead of the times and sharing information, because it's actually going to lead to his capture a lot sooner than it would if obviously they had not shared that information amongst themselves.
Yeah, because, you know, even today, there's still, you know, jurisdiction problems where it's like, oh, well, we're not going to talk. Well, this is in my jurisdiction. It's my case, you know, so it's very good of them to kind of put down any pride and just all work together to try and find them.
Yes, of course. So the next day, February 4th, 1981, in Wairika, California, which is 70 miles north of the murders that occurred the day before, 21-year-old Jessie Clovis is at the liquor store buying some cigarettes, and she gets into her car, and this man opens the driver's door with a gun, and he tells her to move over. So she scoots over, so he drives around, he forces her again to perform oral sex. He is very curious about her sexual past, and he's asking her a lot of questions. You know, what do you do with your boyfriend? Have you ever had oral sex before? Just very invasive. He asks her if she has any money, and she has $20, so he takes it. Again, it's very weird crimes. The money part just doesn't make sense. He's taking these small amounts of money. If it's available, if it's not that big of a deal. That's not what his intention is. So then he pulls the car over, and he rapes her, and he asks her if he should come inside her or if he should pull out and make her swallow. So she's very upset, and she's crying, and she's telling him that she doesn't have a lot of sexual experience, that she's never even done oral before, and she's just super upset. And so she says, okay, just come inside me. She doesn't want to make a decision, but she has to make one. So of course he then pulls out and forces her to swallow.
Yeah, because I think in Anne Rule's book is kind of like, I guess when talking to her, she was like, I just don't think I can swallow again. Like, it was so like gross and nasty, she didn't want to do it again. Mm-hmm. And so when he said come inside, he was like, okay, that's the one you prefer, I'm going to do the one you don't want to do. So
yeah, I mean, obviously this man is awful, so we just want to kind of point out some of the just truly heinous things that he did. So he pulls back on the road, and they're driving around some more, and she asks him, why did you do this to me? And he says, quote, all women are alike. They only give you pussy when they want it. My girlfriend was a waitress and fooled around behind my back. She attracted a lot of men, and that made me jealous. I'm a very jealous guy, unquote. I mean, fuck you. Like, what?
And I mean, that's the thing. If your girlfriend's cheating on you, that sucks. If she's getting a lot of attention and you're jealous, that sucks. Don't fucking rape someone else because of your dick problems. Yes. Like, I'm sorry, but like, don't. That is horrible.
And I think this one, obviously all of them have kind of led us up to this, but just shows the extreme hatred that this man has for all women. Like, he just kind of views them as like, let me put my dick in some hole in this woman, and that's all that's necessary. Yes. So On the morning of February 15th in Beaverton, Oregon, 18-year-old Julianne Reitz was found shot on the stairs inside their townhome. She was found by her mother. There were no signs of a struggle. So after police come, they do find that she was shot with a .38 caliber bullet, that there was semen with type B blood on it, on Julie and in her bed. So the police are investigating, and they're, asking people, did you see anyone around here? Who does Julie hang out with? Of course, they're going to talk to the men that are in her life the most and kind of rule them out first. So they talk to them. They're not finding any connections. So he's asking them, do you remember anyone else? Like, is there anyone else that she has been involved with before? Just, anything. And a local teenager says that he remembers seeing a Volkswagen Bug driving by and stopping in front of Julie's house on the night of February 14th and flashing its lights. So the police had previous reports from some of the other string of robberies that this man drove a Volkswagen, but this murder was not along the I-5 at all. So they had no reason to believe that it was connected to the I-5 killer. So the police are just trying to solve Julie's murder. They're not making the connection with the I-5 killer because it's not in his usual MO.
And it's not along the I-5.
Yes.
So they are just well, this is just somebody who knew her. I-5 killer, he's killing strangers. This appears to be someone she knew, so...
Especially because there were no signs of a struggle. She was found inside the home. The other I-5 murders, there were clear signs of a struggle.
And,
so
this Volkswagen Bug outside, seems like someone's waiting on her. Seems like someone she knows.
Yeah. So then as the police are talking to her friends, one of them remembers that a while ago she dated an older guy named Randy. So they don't remember a lot about him, just that Julie and Randy went on a couple of dates. Julie reported that he came off, pretty strong, and she was a little bit uncomfortable. So they decided to just be friends. And Julie's friend remembers that Randy drove a Volkswagen Bug that was a goldish color. And then another friend brought up the name Randy as well, and remembers that he slept over at Julie's townhouse one night when she was there, that he had slept in her mother's room because her mother was out of town, but in the morning he crawled into bed with them. So she kind of remembers that as she's thinking of other people that Julie had interacted with before. So Julie first met Randy at the Fawcett Tavern in August of 1980. So they went for lunch for a couple of times, they went out for a couple of weeks, and then that's when the incident happens where he gets her drunk and he takes her home, and then he's sleeping in her mother's bed and then gets in the bed with her and her friend in the morning where he fondles Julie. So Julie is 17 years old at this time. Like we said, Randy was quite a bit older. So Julie later saw Randy out with his girlfriend. So she got super upset. She's the 17-year-old girl and this guy's that she's been dating, and then she just sees him with a girlfriend. So she's like, what the hell are you doing? So she yells at him in public and she calls him an asshole, and then she leaves crying and she's super upset. But she sees him later and she apologizes and they agree to be friends. So the police look up this information about this guy named Randy, and they notice that he's on parole. So they decide to get with his parole officer so they can meet up with him at his parole meeting and, just maybe talk to him a little bit. Hey, do you know anything about Julie? Do you know where she was on the night of the 14th? So luckily for them, Randy does not show up to his parole meeting, so they get to go to him. So now they have a specific reason that they can go into Randy's home. So the police officers...
And also... Also, he had moved illegally with his parole, so he wasn't supposed to move, and he was supposed to meet with the new parole officer. So he was kind of towing the line of violating his parole anyway.
Yes.
So this has given them, extra extra, reason to, go to him and be like, now we can go talk to him.
Yeah. So the police show up at his home with his parole officer, and, his parole officer's like, why didn't you show up to your meeting? And he's like, oh, I forgot, or I thought it was at a different time. He's just kind of vague, doesn't really say why he wasn't there. So the Beaverton police that show up with the parole officer tell him that they're investigating the death of Julie. So they ask him if he knows her. He says that he doesn't, but they ask him to go to the police station to answer a few questions, so he says okay. So at the police station, they show him a picture, and at first he says he doesn't recognize her, but then he says he does, that he's hung out with her a few times, but hasn't hung out with her in a while. So they ask Randy where he was Valentine's weekend, and he says that he was staying with his sister in Portland, that he went drinking with some friends, and then he got back to his sister's house around 4 a.m., which would have been now the morning of February 15th. So the police are like, okay, well, if you had nothing to do with this, will you do a blood and hair test and a lie detector test? And he says no, which this doesn't automatically mean that he's guilty because...
Yeah, not that weird, because now we know, like, how unreliable polygraph tests are.
Yes.
So, even today when people refuse, people find it suspicious, but I mean, I honestly probably would not take a polygraph test if I was asked to, even if I was innocent. I'm a very nervous, anxious person, especially like under pressure. And so I feel like no matter like what, it would show I was lying. It's like, what's your name? Courtney. Okay, why are you lying? So
that's false.
Yeah, so it's not too weird to not want to give, your DNA or take a lie detector test, because it can be used poorly as well.
Exactly. So as the police are talking to Randy, initially he says that he's never had sex with her, that, they were just friends, they just hung out a few times. Well, now he says, quote, just because I had sex with her, I wouldn't have killed her, unquote. Which is a little interesting because he earlier said that he had not had sex with her. And for some reason, he agrees to let them search his house. So he wouldn't agree to the blood and hair test and the lie detector test. But he says, yeah, you can come in and search my house. I don't have anything to hide. So at the time, Randy is renting a room in the house of this woman named Arden Bates. So they go to the house and they find some dried blood on the mattress pad, but a small amount, so not necessarily a huge red flag. But they do find the receipt of a .22 caliber gun, a bong, some athletic adhesive tape, some drug paraphernalia, a gun cleaning kit that could be used for a .38 or .357 caliber gun. So when the police see this athletic tape, because I think he has like 4 rolls and 3 of them are unused, but one of them has been torn off. So when they see the tape, they're like, the I-5 killer is famous for having tape or a Band-Aid on his nose and also tying up his victims with this specific type of athletic adhesive tape. So when he's tying up his victims in his robberies, he's not using duct tape, he's using this athletic tape. So they see this and they're like, okay, this is interesting. And also, Randy reports that he does not have a gun. However, he has a receipt for a gun as well as a gun cleaning kit. So those are kind of some red flags. And later they ask Randy what he has a gun cleaning kit for if he does not own a gun. And he says that he was using the cleaning pads to wash his face. So that's...
And I mean, a washcloth and soap does fine. I mean...
Yeah. You don't really... I've never heard... I'm sure they're kind of expensive. I
don't even know what's...
to be using.
Like, what is in a gun cleaning? The Glun Keating. What is in Glun Keating kit?
The hash slinging slasher.
Guys, I do this all the time. I accidentally just combine words in the worst way. Okay, but what is in a gun cleaning kit? Like, is it alcohol based? Like, is this stuff you should be using on your skin? Is my question.
Probably not. I'm going to guess if you can use it to clean a gun, it should probably not be used to clean your face. Just
general rule of thumb.
Yeah. So the police talk to his landlady, Arden Bates. So they're like, okay, tell us a little bit about this Randy. Is he home a lot? Does he go out? Does he pay his bills on time? What's up? And she's like, yeah, he always pays his bills on time. Never had any issues with that. She's like, I don't really know where he gets his money from because he doesn't really work. So he's gone a lot and he's kind of in and out, doesn't really have a specific schedule, but he always pays his bill on time. So they ask Arden if he has ever charged any long-distance calls, because at this time they are just investigating the death of Julie, so they want to know, has he ever made any calls to her, or has he made calls to her recently, because he claims that he has not hung out with her recently. And so she's like, he makes a lot of long-distance calls, I don't know specific locations, but here's the phone bill. So they don't see any calls to Beaverton, but they did find something that they thought was interesting, which was a call to Mount Shasta on February 3rd, which is where which the I-5 killer hit in Mount Shasta on February 3rd. So now the police are like, okay, this is, there's a few interesting things here about Randy, as well as what they found on his record, which we will get into in part 2. But they tell his landlady that maybe her and her 5-year-old son should leave the house for a while. So they don't have enough to arrest him for anything related to the murders yet, but they're like, maybe you should just not be here.
Yeah, and so basically the police really start to look into Randy, and so they find out that he was born Randall Brent Woodfield on December 26th in 1950 in Salem, Oregon. His parents were Walter and Donna Woodfield. They were just like a typical middle-class family, but once he got to junior high, he started exposing himself to women. So he was caught, but he never was charged or received treatment. It was just like, oh well,
Not
goodbye.
a big deal. You just show people your dick and get away. It's okay.
Yeah. Boys will be boys.
Oh, boy.
But, so his high school classmates did say, you know, he was relatively popular. He played football. He could be kind of quiet and shy. And he had plans to be a professional football player, but nothing really gave anyone any alarm about him. So after he graduated high school, he went to Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario, Oregon. He played a bunch of sports, including the football, but he wasn't doing too great academically, kind of focused more on the sports, less on the classes.
I know some people like that.
Yeah. And so he did end up having a girlfriend named Sharon McNeil, but he had extreme issues with rejection. So eventually, you know, relationships come and go. She ended it. So he was very upset. He broke into her house, trashed it, and stole back a stuffed animal he gave her.
It's a bit intense, Randy.
I don't know. I know a few guys I dated probably do this shit.
True.
Hopefully they're not murdering people,
Gosh.
but we'll see.
We'll find out eventually.
I've dated some real winners.
Jeez, Kevin.
One in particular. Anyway, so finally he was charged with vandalism for this, but he was found not guilty because of lack of evidence. But he did continue to harass Sharon with phone calls, letters. He'd send her nudes. He sent her those unsolicited dick pics, the old school style.
The original unsolicited dick pic.
For
In the
the
mail.
next decade. Yeah, in the mail. But he did this for the next decade, which is a long time. So, as I said, not doing too great academically, so he transfers to Mount Hood Community College. And so during the summers, he ends up hanging out with an 8th grader. Just take a second. An 8th grader.
He's in college, hanging out with an 8th grader.
College. Yeah. Her name was Tracy Connors. They said they fooled around, but they never had, like, actual penetration sex.
Okay, Randy.
Okay. She's in 8th grade, Randy. Like, come on now.
She is a child.
So,
She is a child, Randy. You are a
I mean, she has to be 12, 11,
Yeah.
12, 13.
You are a full-ass grown man, Randy.
None of us even had boobs then. Come on now.
I mean, I still don't have boobs. But anyway, that's besides the point.
Don't worry, I got enough for the both
That
of
is
us.
true.
So.
You sure do.
Okay, so in spring of 1971, he enrolls in Portland State University. So he's just hopping around.
Jumping around.
So he's still just dreaming of playing pro football. That's all he wants in his life. He does become very religious, so he'll only date Christian girls, but he's still exposing himself.
Oh, okay.
A little ironic, a little hypocritical.
Maybe, just a little bit.
A little bit. So he was arrested in Vancouver, Washington on August 7th, 1972 for indecent exposure. So he did end up receiving a suspended sentence for this. It's not unusual. I do background checks. It's really not unusual. But he also never had like he didn't have a criminal record at this point, really, because the vandalism, he was found not guilty. You know, all the previous exposing, he was never charged for. So,
And he was also
the whole 8th grader thing.
a juvenile at that time, so it probably doesn't show up on any records once you become an adult.
Yeah, so even if he was charged for it, then it wouldn't show up. So they don't really know much about this, past, so he does receive that suspended sentence, but then he can't stay good for too long, because he was arrested again in Portland on June 22nd, 1973 for what a surprise, again, indecent exposure.
You're showing your dick a lot, Randy.
Like, nobody wants to see it. Just chill.
It's probably not that good.
It's probably not. It's probably a lot of pubes, okay? The 70s? It was pube central.
Just growing everything out.
So, he was also, in addition to being charged with indecent exposure, he was charged with resisting an officer and attempting to elude arrest. So he was sentenced to 5 months, 25 days, and a year probation. But he wasn't forced to serve any time.
No. They're like,
so he just got out.
Like, if you want to, like, come serve this, but, I mean, if not, it's fine. We're not going to come get you.
It's up to you.
It's the 70s.
How you feeling?
Whatever.
Baby, how you feeling? Like, anyway. So, yeah, then he gets arrested again for public indecency on February 22nd, 1974.
Randy!
And guess what? He gets 5 years probation and counseling. But guess what? He never went, and no one ever followed up.
Never.
But, and I mean, I get it, because indecent exposure, like, it's horrible. Especially, like, it sounds like he was exposing himself to, like, adults, you know? But it is, like, a almost victimless crime. You know, you're not, like, assaulting someone, so I guess they're just like, he just likes his dick. Who cares?
I wonder if this would happen now. I mean, of course, there are a lot of factors in play, but if he would be more likely to get arrested now, because we know that there can be an escalation factor to indecent exposure, that, you know, maybe in the 70s it's like, oh, he's just a flasher, it's no big deal. But I mean, that was the same thing they said about peeping toms, and then it's like, oh no, these people typically become stalkers. So maybe now we're a little more aware that if you start out flashing, you're probably more likely to commit sexual assault at some point. So
I don't know. I do background checks. I see people get charged with indecent exposure all the time. And honestly, Randy got a harder sentence than anyone I've ever seen charged with indecent exposure. So, I mean, most of the times, because it's a misdemeanor, you get like 6 months suspended sentence, 6 months probation. You got to pay some fines. People get diversions for it, which I don't know. Not everyone knows what a diversion is. Basically, you can go in. You usually have to plead guilty, and if you don't have a criminal record, the judge, like, okay, like, you be on probation for 6 months, a year, whatever. If you're good, if you don't violate, if you pay your fines, we'll just dismiss it, and you can eventually get it expunged. So, from what I see these days, they just kind of, whatever.
Well, it also sounds like, knowing that Randy has started doing this for so long, and knowing his questionable relationships with women in the way that he treated his ex-girlfriend, that maybe there's something more sexual to this versus a lot of indecent exposure that's like, oh, I was drunk and I took a piss behind a building and a cop caught me with my dick out. I mean, that happens. Like that, I'm guessing that's the most common indecent exposure charge. This is me just 100% guessing. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't know. But
I've seen it all. Anyway, but I mean, I think it is too, it's like, so many, this is Portland too, I'm sure so many people are getting arrested that they don't really have time to be like, what happened in every single, because I know usually when I see dockets, it's like, this is what they're charged with, this is the sentencing, it was guilty, that's it. Like, they don't put a lot of the info. And I mean, if he's not being forced to serve his time, if he's supposed to go to counseling and no one's following up, they just honestly don't give a shit. So
yeah
that's basically what's happening, and that happens a lot. Like, people just kind of fall through the cracks. I mean, like I said, I do background checks, and I see shitty stuff all the time. Like, I see people, aggravated statutory rape, getting a diversion, like I mentioned. So if they're good for 3 years, they can get it dismissed and expunged. And I'm not lying when I say I see theft and drug charges that get way more sentencing than aggravated sexual battery.
Which is
like
insane.
I'm not exaggerating at all. Like, yes, you have to be put on the sexual offender registry. It's on your history. That sucks. But literally, they'll spend not even a year in jail and just out. So I'm scorned from the system, basically, and I'm not hopeful that they would even care what happened and just be like, well, here you go.
True.
And again, I don't know if this was to children either. If it was children, maybe they'd give him a heftier sentence.
Yeah.
Maybe they're like, he's just kind of being, you know, out on campus, just showing his wee-wee.
Just being Randy, whipping his dick out here and there. Okay.
So, as I'd mentioned before, he did dream of playing professional football, and so his dreams did come true, and he was drafted by the Green Bay Packers in 1974. So he did go through all the training, but he was cut from the traveling squad, and he played for the Manitowoc Chiefs from September to December of 1974. He was eventually dismissed. There is rumors of further exposure in Green Bay. There was never an official comment. It's speculated he might have been dismissed because there he is again, just showing his little wee-wee to everybody. And the Green Bay Packers were like, just go away. We'll pretend it didn't happen. Goodbye. You're on our minor league team. Just goodbye. So, I mean, this is kind of when Randy starts spiraling a bit. All he wanted in his life was to be a professional football player. He's kind of cut from the team. And this is kind of when things start escalating, like Jaclyn was saying, things really start escalating from just kind of walking around with his dick out to more serious crimes. So.
Yes. So next week we will get into a little bit about what Randy does next, as well as the rest of the investigation and trial into the I-5 murders, sexual assaults, and robberies. So, this one has a lot of details, so we apologize if it was a bit tedious, but we do want to make sure that we are highlighting as many victims' names as possible. Like we've mentioned in previous episodes, we just want to make sure that they get the recognition and the justice that they deserve. So we want to make sure that as we are talking about these horrible murderers, that we are also remembering and honoring their victims.
And we tried to give you all the dates to show, all this between December and February, that's when all this is happening. And it's a lot, and it's a lot of dates, it's a lot of places, it's a lot going on. We are trying our hardest to make it cohesive and make you be able to understand. So,
because he was just all over the place. So
yeah, hopefully you kind of got a glimpse into Randy with this up until about the 1970s, and then we're really going to start diving in until 1975 to his crimes, letting you know what's kind of happening with Randy, how he's a dick. Sorry, Randy, but you're a dick. And we'll really dive into that in part 2, and hopefully you're excited to find out more about him, find out about his trial, all that.
Yep. All right, so what is your perk of the week, Courtney?
All right. Y'all cannot judge me. This is a no judgment zone right here. My
of course, always.
Perk of the week is Love is Blind. So yes, it's reality TV and it's trashy, but I was addicted. I binged it in a day. One day, I stayed up until 3 a.m. watching Love is Blind. I don't know. I was so invested and so baffled by people. And I know a lot of it seems way over the top. I'm sure a lot of it was producers coming in being over exaggerate this, overdo that. Mm-hmm. But it was the definition of a palate cleanser basically from all the crime we've been consuming. Because it's just, it was just a nice break to just kind of sit and just watch people sit in pods and date people and get engaged before they ever see them, which all these people who were on the show were in very in shape, tiny, attractive people. So I was a little where's my bigger girl? Where is she? So it was kind of you were going to get an attractive person no matter what. A little rigged that way. But overall, it was really interesting. Apparently, they're going to come out with a lot more seasons, and I'm excited.
Nice.
And it's a good trashy watch, so I recommend that.
Good. We all need that sometimes.
Yeah. So what's your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is that today, I can never get this right. We either ended daylight savings time or we started daylight savings time.
No clue.
I can never remember which one it is. But we sprung forward an hour, so it's going to be light outside until 6:30 p.m. And that makes me so happy. I can get home and I can take the dogs for a full walk and get home before it's dark. Pretty soon the weather's going to warm up, so it's going to be warm when I get home, and I can go for a run in the evenings instead of just the weekends, midday when it's not 20 degrees, and Yeah, so sunshine and warmer weather coming.
Yeah,
and
we can all feel that seasonal affective depression
Whew,
lifting,
yes.
because I know it sucks. Like, I'll get home, like, from after traffic, I get home at, like, 5:30, 5:45, and I'm like, it's dark outside. I'm gonna sit here. So it's nice, you know, maybe when I get home on Mondays, like, Kevin and I can go for a walk, and it'll just be really nice.
And here in Virginia, it gets dark earlier than any place I've lived before. So, like, in the dead of winter, like, the sun went down at, like, 4:51 p.m. And I'm like, I can't... And I know there are people out there that it goes down earlier, so
And you, like, live in Alaska, and it's just dark for, like, 7 months. I don't know how long it is, but...
I don't know how you guys manage it, because I need that vitamin D, so... Yeah, so I think that's all we have for this week. Next week, we will finish up this case and let you guys know how everything ends. So if you want to reach us, you can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at caffeinatedcrimespod.
Yeah, and hopefully you'll go and rate, review, and subscribe. You know, give us hopefully a 5-star. If it's less than a 5-star, just please explain it, and we'll try to fix it. Or we'll just be like,
feedback.
Oh, well, we're annoying people. I spent a lot of money on a mic. I'm going to go ahead and keep doing it. So
I think we're funny. I mean, when I'm editing episodes, I'm like in here by myself with my headphones in, just laughing at our own episodes. So if no one else enjoys it, at least we do.
Yeah, hopefully you like us. If not, well, that's your problem. Don't listen.
Yeah. Sorry.
Just don't, if you don't like us, just don't review. How's that? Anyway, no.
Perfect.
So, yeah, you can, at the socials and Gmail that Jaclyn said, you can reach us there. But yeah, and so why don't you guys just go and have a cup of coffee?
And please don't commit a crime.